Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Mary, and today's video is going to be a recap of my reading stats for the first quarter of the year. So I want to take this video up in April, but obviously that did not happen. I'm filming it on May 23rd, which is also hopefully the day that this will go up. But I just wanted to go through the books that I've read so far this year. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm just going to go through some highlights, some disappointments, and then go over some of my goals for the year and where I'm at in achieving those. So first, I'll just start by saying that I read 34 books in the first quarter of the year, that is January through March, and I DNF'd 3 books, so that's that. Physically, I read 3 actual physical books and 7 ebooks, which is 10 books that I read with my eyes, which is the stat that I'm tracking, and I believe my goal was 2 a month, so I'm doing good on that front. I also would like to be reading more diversely, and by that I mean I want to read more books with queer rep, and I want to read more female than male authors, and I would also like to read a large percentage of my authors of color so that I'm getting other perspectives. So I hope that makes sense. I don't have an exact goal for authors of color, but I would like it to at least be a third. And I know that that's maybe not the best goal to have, but it is the goal that I want to set for myself because I do think that that's achievable. I am not accomplishing that so far. So I've read 5 authors of color so far this year, which is not great. That's not this year. That's for the first quarter of the year, sorry. And then I also have read from 13 male authors and 21 female authors. So I'm doing good on my wanting to read for more women than men. No offense, men. I do tend to read for more female authors anyways. So I'm actually reading more male authors than I normally do. And a large part of that is that I'm reading a series right now, the Game of Thrones series by a male author, and I'm reading pretty much a book a month of those. For queer rep, I have read 3 books that feature queer rep in the first quarter of the year. Again, I would like this number to be higher. I don't have an exact goal. I'm just keeping an eye on it because I do want to read from more queer perspectives. And so I don't track whether or not an author is queer because I find that kind of a tricky thing to find out, if that makes sense. Like, there are some authors that write queer fiction that may or may not be queer, and I don't really feel like I am in a position where I want to, really shine a flashlight on that and try to make somebody come out. That's not really what I'm after. I believe Casey McQuiston was forced to come out after people were giving them a lot of shit about writing male romances and really capitalizing on a queer market when they allegedly were not queer, and then it turns out that they are. So I just want to avoid that. And then this one I just found interesting. My top genre so far this year is fantasy, at least for the first quarter of the year. And I do want to keep track of what I'm reading. And my second top genre is nonfiction, which I also thought was interesting. So I've read 9 fantasy books and 8 nonfiction books. So that could mean whatever you want it to mean, I guess. For my best book so far of the year, I have 3 contenders that I think might end up being top book of the year. These are all 3 books that I gave 5 stars to, obviously, and they're all 3 books that I still think about. And so the first I have Kept Animals by Kate Milliken, which is a historical fiction novel, I suppose. It's kind of contemporary, kind of historical fiction. We're primarily set in the past, following Rory Ramos, who is a teenager growing up on a horse ranch in California, and it's her coming of age story throughout this one summer. We go into her relationship with her neighbor, her finding out that she is potentially queer, and then also her getting pregnant. And in the present day timeline, she has just died. Actually, she's a war correspondent as an adult. It's not a spoiler, the whole time. Pretty much, I think you find out in the first chapter or so. And her daughter is learning about this summer. That was really definitive for her mom. But you're primarily in the mom's point of view in the past, if that makes sense. This book I loved, and I recently talked about it in books I wish more people would talk about because it has fewer than 1,000 ratings and less than 200 reviews. And I really do think that this is an incredible book, and I wish more people were reading it. That one, I also have The Sisters of the Winter Wood by Rena Rossner, which is about 2 sisters in 1908 in Moldova. Are all of these historical? These are all historical novels, which I think is interesting. This is set in 1908 in Moldova, and we're following this Jewish family, and something has happened to, I believe, the patriarch of the dad of the girls, and he has to go back to his home village to sort things out, and their mom decides she's going to go with them. Their parents had a relationship that was contested by both of their parents' families, and you find out throughout the novel that the mother was not Jewish, so she had to convert to Judaism to be with the father, and her family didn't like that. And also she comes from she's descendant of a family of swans, so they can turn into swans, and the girl's dad is a descendant of the family of bears, and so they turn into bears. And one of the daughters has the ability to turn into a swan, and the other daughter has the ability to turn into a bear. And they are going through this summer or this year, this time in their life, I don't remember what time of the year it was, where their parents are gone and they're sort of taking care of each other and themselves. And they've both been tasked with watching out for the other one. And they're also facing these transformations for the first time in their life. So it's really interesting look at like folklore and mythology if you like that kind of thing. And it's also like not super heavy in having to know a lot about it, because I didn't know anything about this before going into it. But you also, it's very much a coming of age story with this like magical twist. There's a bit of a romance in it, but the main like plot is these sisters and their relationship with each other, and also their relationship with their parents changing, knowing what their parents have kept from them, if that makes sense. So I loved this book. I thought it was fantastic. And again, I wish more people were reading it. This one has 7,000 ratings, so more than the last one, but I really loved it. I recommend it very highly. The next book that is a contender for like top book of the year so far is What the River Knows by Isabel Banez. And this came out last October, I believe. And it is about this girl who is from Argentina. Again, it's historical fantasy, so it's set in, it's coded very 19th century. Or early 20th century, maybe? I don't really know. Regardless, this girl is living in Buenos Aires, and she has parents who spend half the year in Egypt every year. And so she has not a very close relationship with them. And then her parents turn up dead, or missing, presumed dead, rather. And she gets this letter from her uncle basically saying that he's going to be giving her an allowance, and her parents are dead, and that's that. And she decides that she's not going to take that for an answer, so she goes to Egypt, where her parents have been studying artifacts, because she wants to find out what happened to them, basically. And so there's a little bit of a mystery element in it. The fantasy aspect of this book comes in with the main character having these like flashbacks from certain artifacts that lead her to believe, or lead her to the tomb of Cleopatra. That's what her parents were trying to discover, and that's what her uncle is trying to discover. And there's a lot of like heavy mystery going on because we don't know who we can trust. There are reasons that you think you can't trust each character, and different things get revealed. This leaves on a pretty big cliffhanger, actually. So I did not realize going into it that it was going to be a series, but it is. It's called The Secrets of the Nile series, and I don't know when the next one is coming out. But there's also a romance aspect in here with this guy, Whit, who works for the main character's uncle. Her name is Inez. I don't know if I've said that already. But they have this kind of like flirtationship thing happening. There's not really anything happening there. It's very slow burn, but I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I thought you could really like feel how much the characters felt for each other. So I'm highly anticipating the sequel to this, and I do hope it comes out this year, but let's see if it has a date. It's expected to publish this year, but it does not have an exact publication date yet, but it's called Where the Library Hides. Those are probably my 3 top books of the year. Just going through, not spending a lot of time on this, but the worst books that I think I read during the first quarter. Other mine, I decided to stop reading DNF, that's what it's called, DNF, the Black Dagger Brotherhood series. In the first quarter of this year, I, if you recall, started reading them last year, really liked the second and third, and then didn't really like any of the other ones. So that was kind of a disappointment. I also read a couple of nonfictions that weren't the best, in my opinion. Silent Spring Revolution, personally, I thought this one was too long. It goes through the different presidents and what they did for like environmentalism in the US. And frankly, I just felt like it was so much information, but still at such a high level that it just was boring for me to read. And I'm sad about that because I was really anticipating this book, because environmentalism is something that I'm really interested in, and like finding a place in history and being able to understand what happened historically at different times is something that I would like. It's a skill that I would like to gain. I've never been a great history buff, and I don't think I will ever be, but it's something that I'm interested in learning more about. I also read Thanks a Lot, Mr. Kibblewhite by Roger Daltrey of The Who, and thought it was fine. I'm not that big of a Who fan. I need to go through and get rid of some of my music memoirs because I don't know that I care that much about reading them. Even if it's a well-known band, if I am not familiar with the artist, I don't think I'm loving it as much. And then Digital Minimalism, I really didn't like. I've talked about that a good bit. That is a nonfiction about like learning to be more present in your life and how to condense your life online. And I just did not find it helpful, and I thought it was really pretentious. But those are the like big misses. I've also done 2 rereads so far this year. So I reread Educated. Oh, I guess I can only talk about one of them because the other one wasn't this quarter. So the first quarter of the year, I did manage 1 reread. I reread Educated by Tara Westover. It's one of my favorite books. It's a memoir. I will probably end up rereading it again, but it's about Tara Westover, who is at this point, like memoirist, essayist, writer, if you will. She's got a PhD from Oxford, I think. And she grew up Mormon in a like doomsday prepper household. I don't really know how to describe it because her parents being Mormon is not what was weird about her family. And I like feel like I need to be so clear about that because they weren't even like traditional Mormon. They also weren't like fundamentalist Mormon. Like you hear about the different cults that were happening in like New Mexico and Utah and like underage brides. That was not her family either. They were not polygamists. It was none of that. It was just very much that like her parents really feared the government and the government interference in their lives. So they never got any of their kids' birth certificates. They didn't go to the hospital for any reason. And she talks about like all the health impacts that has had on her parents after various accidents. They never registered or got driver's license for their cars. They didn't have insurance. There was just all this stuff that like she didn't have and didn't know wasn't normal until she eventually got out of that situation by going to college. She went to BYU because BYU has a really, I don't know if this is still the case, but when Tara Westover went to college, Brigham Young University is a Mormon university in Utah, and they might have other locations. I don't know, but she went to the one in Provo, which is coincidentally where Brandon Sanderson now teaches. So that's fun. But she was able to get in because they had a really like lenient homeschooling policy, I guess because so much of the Mormon population homeschools. So she did not have to do a lot of proving. She just had to take the ACT. And so basically the only schooling she did was studying to take the ACT. And it was just really fascinating. I find it pretty inspiring how she's able to get out of these situations. And then also like the hurt she still feels for a lot of things that happened in her life is like palpable and tangible while you're reading the book. Like it's so sad and so like heart-wrenching to read about her experiences and also like the way that her family has treated her since leaving their situation. It just like, I don't know. I find it very emotionally impactful to me. So I love that book. If you haven't read it, I do still highly recommend it. I know it's probably been recommended like ad nauseum because it was a big book club book when it came out, but I loved it. And I still love it. I continue to love it. And I will probably read it again, as I mentioned. So that is my quick, hopefully rapid fire update for the first quarter of the year. Sorry, it's coming to you about 6 weeks late. But if you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you would like to, you can go ahead and subscribe to my channel because I do try to post 2 videos every week. And I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!